My name's Hannah, and today I will be talking a little bit about how historians can kind of mediate between like fact and memory. Starting off, we kind of looked at chapter 7 in Clint Smith's book, and we looked at Gorey Island and how he traveled there as a journalist and was kind of able to look at it from the lens of both like a journalist and as a black man and like a black father, black son in the US. And so Gorey Island was essentially a really big port and a really big hub for during the transatlantic slave trade. And it was incredibly significant. And now it's just become this huge emblem and symbol for the history and like the brutality of slavery in the US. But apparently, researchers and historians in Clint Smith's book have talked about how the actual statistics and numbers have kind of shown that basically people think that there were less people that were actually going through Gorey Island and that it was less like heavily foot trafficked than what people originally thought. And it was just kind of against this popular belief that Gorey Island was heavily foot trafficked. So it kind of raises that question of what do we do in history when fact and memory and truth kind of don't like line up and don't align the same way. But in my opinion, I think that historians have this huge responsibility to obviously seek the truth, and they do that by looking at evidence. They look at by researching people and finding these narratives in evidence and like correcting these inaccuracies. But at the same time, I think it's also important that we don't ignore that the importance of memory and how it also carries like a lot of emotional truth. Because it is true that Gorey Island has become really significant in helping to educate people about slavery and being this place of like reflection and kind of managing grief behind slavery and figuring out personal identity. And so Gorey Island is still really valued, and it's still a place where enslaved people pass through. And so despite there being discrepancies about like specifics in numbers and in population, it's still a place of mourning and historical significance and where people can kind of like still confront slavery. So I think that historians should act as like both this bridge between the past and the present and look at both truth and both emotions and behind memories and stuff. But I think that Gore Island essentially just it still reminds us the significance of history behind slavery and how those people's stories were still real and raw and impactful. But yeah, thank you for listening.